Welcome back, and I have been looking forward to this for quite some time. What a delight to have in the studio with us today Dan Izzett. He's a representative and board member of American Leprosy Missions. And what a story, and what a lot to talk about. They're working primarily in Asia, Africa, and Brazil. He and his wife visiting the U.S. from Zimbabwe and are making the tour around, and we are here to talk to him about it. By the way, let me give it to you right at the top here. Leprosy.org is the website, leprosy.org. Hi, Dan.
Good morning, Perry.
Nice to have you.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
I've been looking forward to this. I've heard nothing but good things about you, so I guess they're all true.
I hope so.
Well, tell us a little bit about American Leprosy Missions.
American Leprosy Missions, as you read out earlier on, we are operating in many parts of the world, and the whole desire is to reach people that have been affected by the disease of leprosy.
Wow.
And sometimes they're pretty well hidden. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're quite open. It's such a disease that's attached to stigma that makes many, many people feel very afraid of the disease and even afraid to go for treatment, because often it leads to ostracization.
It has an unusual stigma to it, doesn't it?
It has. I think a lot of it is false. I think it's an ancient disease. It's been around for thousands of years.
Well, tell us your story. Tell about growing up in Zimbabwe, and here you are in Medford, Oregon. I mean, how's that happen?
Don't worry, I'm frequently surprised at where I find myself. Yes, Zimbabwe used to be known as Rhodesia. Some people might know it as Rhodesia. Going back, we've now been independent for 36 years. It was fun. It's a lovely country. It actually gets quite cold in winter. We have about 2 or 3 days of frost. Wow. Otherwise, the weather is wonderful. We have 350 days of wonderful sunshine. So it just sort of lent itself to being outside. Our day was controlled by when the sun came up and when the sun went down. And I think as children, we rode bicycles. We had catapults. You know what a catapult is?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you know what a catapult is?
Yeah.
Yes. And we'd shoot birds and, cook them over a fire. And I think sometimes we actually set the bush on light. But anyway.
Wow.
Kind of things that children do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great fun. There was no TV.
Oh, that's why you have a smile on your face.
This is pre-TV, so we read books, rode around, and had great family times together. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So how did you become a Christian?
How did I become a Christian? I actually grew up in a Christian family, but that didn't make me a Christian. No, it didn't make me a Christian. But I can remember at about the age of 5.5, listening to the evening service, and the minister spoke on our garments of righteousness. And there was one man who had a blemish on his suit. And anyway, he had his hand over it, and he came into the presence of the Lord. And the Lord said, well, take your hand down. He said, oh, no, I just want to be close to you with my hand on my heart. And he said, no, take it down. And when she took it down, there was this blemish there. And he said, the Lord said to him, he said, you haven't repented of all your sin, have you? And I can remember this little boy, just 5.5, thinking, wow, I need to deal with the sin in my life. And I made a commitment to the Lord.
What a story. What a story. So you grew up in high school and all that.
Yes.
Did you go into did you have a military to go into?
We do have a military, yes. At that time, it was a national call-up, but I went into high school. Went into a technical high school. I loved it. Now, high school for us is at the year you turn 13, you graduate from primary school to high school to finish your last 6 years. Went to a technical high school, yeah.
And what did you learn there? What did you do?
Technical subjects. We didn't have to do history. We didn't have to do literature. We didn't have to do Latin, as was done in those days. We did technical subjects, and I remember I loved the woodwork and the metalwork.
Wow.
But there were times when, particularly at the age of 13, I would actually burn my hands, bang my hands, get splinters in them. But the strange thing was there was no pain. And I kind of thought, well, as a 13-year-old boy, it's that time in your life when you have all those hormones rushing around and sort of trying to find a place to lodge in your life and in your body.
Yeah.
I just thought this happens to all young boys of that age.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I suppose I lived in denial. That's what it was.
So how did you get called into full-time ministry?
into full-time ministry was just a real tug at our hearts. I did civil engineering, and there was just a real tug in our hearts to go into ministry. And I think, like many people in the church, sort of start off as a member, then you graduate to vice youth leader, and then you graduate to youth leader, and then because you're the youth leader, you get brought on the church board, and then sort of work your way right through to where we just knew that this is what God wanted for us to do.
Tell me about your family, meeting your wife.
Oh, that was fun. Because I was doing engineering, I went into building dams. That was my favorite thing.
Really?
And I built big dams, and I was in her hometown. I didn't know her at that time. And the dam that I built was 150 foot high, earth-filled dam, and it held back 65 million cubic meters of water. Now, I know you don't work in liters here or cubic meters, but it's still a lot of water.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, we deal with feet here.
You deal with feet and gallons. I think.
Yeah.
I did have the conversion because I grew up with gallons now, but right now I'm totally metricated. And just one evening I thought I'd go for a party. I was actually in a bad place with the Lord at that time in my life. I thought I'd go for a party. And I met her, and that was the 16th of October, 1969 at 8:47 in the evening when I met her.
Now, how many people know that? Wow.
Quite often when I say
it must have been very impacting for you.
The love of my life. Yeah. I quite often when I say that, I see wives nudge over their husbands, look what he's done.
Yeah.
But it's just a gift from the Lord, I think, and
So what happened from then on?
The rest is history, but what happened is we got married in the August 1970. I remember the day I met her. I remember the day I proposed to her. But we got married in August. It was the 15th or the 17th, somewhere around about there. But I know we got married at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Now, there's a date you may want to remember.
No. I've convinced my wife for 46 years now that was the most important date.
Well,
when I
to
met
celebrate
her.
for 4 or 5 days in a row there.
That was in the August. And in the November, I broke out in a rash all over my body. So I went to see a dermatologist, and he looked at it and he said, yeah, I know what it is. He says, you've got syphilis. Yeah, that's just what I thought. You reacted like I did. I said, no, not at all, sir. Now, we've been married in August, and this is the November.
Wow.
I said, no, both my wife and I have had life's philosophy to keep ourselves to the day we found the person for the rest of our lives. I said, that's incorrect. He said, no, you're wrong. I know you. I used to be an Air Force doctor, and I know you young men, you are like roosters. I said, no, you're wrong, sir. Anyway, he won, and he put me on treatment. He took a blood test, and it came back positive for it. Well, what happened is I had the treatments, multiple treatments, never came right. And so in February 72, he said, no, I don't know what's wrong with you. In fact, my doctor, who'd been our home doctor all many, many years, he said, we actually think you got tertiary syphilis. So I said, well, what is that? I'd never heard of that before. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And he said, no, it actually goes to your brain, and you go mad, and then you die. So I sort of kind of felt a bit shocked at that.
I want to imagine.
So then he sent me along to a...
Were you still having the feeling problems?
Yes, that just sort of seemed to get worse in my hands. I'd lost them, and it actually proceeded up to about my elbows, because then he sent me along to another doctor, and he tested me, and I was anesthetic up to above my elbows, both my legs above my knee, and about 70% of my face. It was an interesting concept, and he just had no idea. I had spinal taps, X-rays. This is pre-MRI days, and that. And so we just tried everything, but he just said one day, he said, I have absolutely no idea what's wrong with you. And then he said, go home. I'll call you later. So he called me a few days later, and he said, come in. I've been speaking to a colleague of mine, so quite excited. And he went there, and he took a skin scrape off my forehead. A week later, I was called in to then go and see another doctor again, and this time it was a government doctor. Government doctor government medical office, and we waited our turn and got through to him, and he said, well, Mr. and Mrs. Izzett, we found out what's wrong with you. So you can imagine the elation, you know. So I said, is it syphilis? And he said, no, not syphilis. So I said, oh, wonderful. He says, yeah, we've got drugs to cure the disease. So I said, wow, this is great. Now, this is February 72, March 72. And I said, what is it? If it's not syphilis, what is it? He said, you've got Hansen's disease. So I kind of sat back and said, well, I've never heard of Hansen's disease. What is Hansen's disease? So he filled in. And I can imagine the elation after, from November 70 right through to February 72, wrong diagnosis, wrong diagnosis, wrong diagnosis. And he said, yes, Hansen's disease. He says, it's just another name for leprosy.
You had leprosy?
Had leprosy.
All this time?
As I worked it back, I most probably contracted the disease at about the age of 5. The disease has an incubation period of about 7, 8 years. Some people claim even longer. I suppose it could be. So if I had a loss of sensation at the age of 13, deduct 7 years, 5.
Wow.
Round about the age of 5.
Wow.
So that 7 years was quite a key period to me.
Are you contagious?
You are contagious. Leprosy is a very strange disease. It has this long incubation period because the Mycobacterium lepra builds up very slowly in your body. So when I was diagnosed with the disease, he said it's actually lepromatous leprosy, which is the most infectious or the most bacilli in your body.
Really?
With that, yes.
Wow. I got to take a break. You're fascinating. You are already proving something that I say over and over and over again. Whatever God saves you from or brings you through, He turns around and makes you a minister to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Today's disappointments are God's appointments for us.
There you go. All right. We'll be right back. Fascinating story. Leprosy.org, the website. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, we're back, and what a fascinating time with Dan Izzett. He is a representative and board member of the American Leprosy Missions, and by the way, you can go to leprosy.org is the website. His own story is fascinating. We just found out as a young boy up through adulthood and into his early marriage that he suffered with, they thought was syphilis, ended up being a form of leprosy, a very aggressive form of leprosy. I got a gazillion questions in only a few minutes, so let me ask you this. In biblical times, leprosy was isolated, you were put away, and that was the end of you.
Yes.
Is it still looked upon like that today? Does it still carry a stigma like that?
I think there is a stigma attached to it, but if we actually look into the leprosy as such, which is a word translated from the Latin vulgar translation, lepra, which meant all skin diseases.
Right.
Your more modern English translations use the term multiple skin diseases,
okay,
or various. So if you have measles or chickenpox, you are isolated for 7 days.
Right.
And then you come back and you're declared clean. But you could do that with the leprosy. You could go in and out, okay, and it'll never happen. So that's the huge difference.
Are you still being treated?
No. The treatment today is between 6 months and 2 years, depending on your position with the amount of bacilli in your body when you're diagnosed.
Were you ever fearful of your wife getting it?
No, not at all. We were told that it is 95% of the world is immune or self-healing to the disease, and it's not genetically passed on. But so the chance of my wife getting it was very low. But what actually happened is, after I'd been diagnosed, we went home, and it was a bit of a shock. And I sat down and I said, look, we just recently married. I would like to annul our marriage. I'd like to give you the opportunity. Had I known I'd had leprosy, I most probably would never even got married, let alone getting married and then getting the surprise. And I said, we can do that. She looked at me, she says, no ways. She said, I love you. She said, one day we stood before God and before man. We made a commitment to each other, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, until death us do depart. And I do not see a disease that we did not know about as a reason for us
Beautiful.
to get divorced.
So here you are in Zimbabwe. Now you're working with American leprosy missions.
Yes.
How'd that connection be made?
But what had happened is something interesting, and maybe I just need to backtrack a little bit over here, is that with the second son that my wife was pregnant with, she came out in brown patches, which is classic spots. The gynecologist said it was just hormonal. She was pregnant, which we said, okay, until one day she burned herself and had no feeling with it. So I said, leprosy doctor. And you know what? After 7 years of marriage, she was diagnosed with leprosy as well. Early diagnosis, mine's a late diagnosis. I have multiple deformities because of the disease. She has nothing, early diagnosis. Key to saving people's lives, saving disabilities is an early diagnosis. So she had it.
Wow. All right, so you come in contact with the American Leprosy Mission. You feel called to work with them. What is your work now?
My work now is I'm a retired pastor. I came out in blotches again. I had 2 blotches on my legs, and I thought immediately, leprosy all over again, but horrified at that. This was in 1999, 27 years after I was diagnosed with leprosy. Had a test, it wasn't leprosy, it was just the dead bacilli being dumped out of my body. And so suddenly we became an item. We were Caucasians, we weren't poverty stricken, we were educated, we lived our own lives, so our testimony was asked for. And we agonized. It had been our secret for 28 years that we'd had leprosy, both of us. I said, one day we were praying, and the verse from Esther came through. For such a time like this, we shared it. And well, our invitations haven't stopped.
So, what can people do maybe to help you with the mission and get involved with the mission? But I would assume there's some preparation before they get involved with all of this. I mean, handling leprosy is not an easy thing to do.
We're aiming for reaching 1 million people by 2020.
Really?
At least visiting 1 million people to see if they have a leprosy. Because just last year, we made a vaccine. First time there's been a vaccine for leprosy.
Really?
Yeah, so we have a vaccine for leprosy now.
Wow. And what's it do? Is it just stall it or stop it or what?
It prevents a person from passing on the disease. That's what and getting the disease. So it's in the process right now for organic testing, and we're hoping in the short while's time to test it on people and do safety trials.
Wow.
So you want to get involved? We want to do 1 million people. Now this is my personal thing. If we want to reach 1 million people, we need 1 million prayer partners.
There you go.
Link up with us, because this is a very Christian organization.
Dan, how big is leprosy in the world today? How prevalent is this disease?
If I told you every 2 minutes, statistically, somebody is diagnosed with leprosy somewhere in the world.
Every 2 minutes?
Every 2 minutes.
I had no idea it was that big.
Yeah, and every 20th person is a child.
Really? Is it regional?
It's in 131 countries in the world. It's being diagnosed. The largest country being India, but then they have a huge population, so it's pretty easy to be, yes.
Right. So I would assume you're welcome into those areas to treatment?
Yes.
Is there government interference?
There's lots of government interference.
I would imagine. Okay. Yeah.
Because you're coming in and invariably they think you're flashing a lot of dollars.
Yeah.
And some governments love the money.
How do you mix God's love and help with medicine and helping leprosy?
You know, Jesus spoke very clearly. He says, go into the world, heal the sick and cleanse those with leprosy. It's interesting, out of all the diseases in the world, he said, cleanse those with leprosy. So how do we mix it? You know, we minister to a sick body. It's a long-term disease, it's a long time of dealing with people. Do you know what? You have a long time to speak into their spirits. You have prayer backing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so important to have one person for one person to pray back us. Mm-hmm. And trust the Lord. Let the Holy Spirit do the convicting work that is needed to bring them to salvation.
Can you match a prayer partner with somebody with leprosy through your website? Is that how that works?
It's just a new concept. This
Okay.
is a little concept that I really sort of kind of feel that I'd like to be pushing.
Okay.
Do contact Leprosy.org, yes.
Do you, when you go into a country, do you set up a team? You train them? What do you do when you go into a country?
Yes, invariably where the outreach is there, we have hospitals that we're involved in. We meet other people. We join up with other leprosy organizations. And we also deal with Ebola, you know, because that's also a skin-type disease.
Right.
So we're not afraid to go in with our medical expertise because people are people.
Yeah.
They need to be reached. They need to be touched and loved.
I got about a minute. Can leprosy uncaught be fatal?
Leprosy doesn't kill you. One of the first things the doctor told me, he says, you will outlive me. Leprosy doesn't kill you, and it doesn't eat your flesh. It sets you up for disabilities.
Was that what it does?
Yeah.
Primarily nerve?
It's a nerve thing. Your nerves do three things: motor, sensation, and structure. My motor, my hand doesn't work properly. I do not feel, and my structure is bad.
Yeah. And that in itself can be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
For any kind of
Very,
injury.
very, yeah.
Yeah. You're a delight.
Thank you.
And an inspiration. Dan Izzett, he is a representative board member of American Leprosy Missions right here in the United States. You can go to leprosy.org and learn more about that. Fascinating testimony, and something that maybe, you know, you never know how God, when people hear something like this, they get the tug to get involved. And that's what it's all about.
Follow your heart. Follow what the Spirit of God is saying.
Yeah, follow your heart. That's what it's all about. And best to you and your wife. And next time you're in Oregon, please come by again. Oh, we're gonna run out of your poem. We don't have time for it. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I apologize.
Can I say, our history is really His story.
His story. Thank you. Thank you.
Leprosy, where is your sting?
There you go.